My e-commerce business does $1 million a year in revenue, and there is zero chance it would be there without my VA team in the Philippines. Now, before I found them, I was wasting thousands on salaries and spending months training someone I should have never hired, because I knew that every hour I spent towards $5 work was an hour not spent on the work that makes me more money, the revenue driving activities. When I finally built an overseas hiring system that worked, a lot changed. Suddenly, I had 10, 20 hours a week back every single week to put towards only buying and selling more inventory, and my revenue followed. In this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly how I would hire an e-commerce virtual assistant in 2026 using my 4-level vetting protocol so you can skip all of the time, mistakes, and pain I already paid for. Let's get into it. All right, so the first step of the process is going to be writing the job posting. Now, what I see is a lot of people will write these job postings in a way that looks like every other job posting. And this is the first impression that a candidate is getting of my business. So I want it to be a good one. I write the job posting in a way that's going to speak to that ideal candidate. It's going to be very easy to read, easy to understand, and focused on what they care about. I always make the salary very clear right at the top of the job posting. There's going to be no confusion as to the salary range. I always put a deadline on the applications of 2 weeks from today. Then I include a little intro section to give a little context on the company. Now, this is a job posting we have live for a client right now. And so I just basically selling the opportunity. Grow your career with an e-commerce business based in New Hampshire. 1 slot left, so give this one your all. So the sections we break into are must-haves, nice-to-haves, responsibilities, expectations, process, and contract value. We'll start off with the must-haves. So now the one thing you'll notice is that this is not paragraphs, it's bullet points. I want it to be easily digestible for someone to read. And so the first must-have is 1 year experience in a remote virtual assistant role. Now, for an e-commerce virtual assistant, I do not hire someone that has direct experience in the role because I find that I end up having to reteach them everything they learned from the last guy, because usually the last guy that hired them thought they could hire a VA and not have to work ever. And I don't want them doing the same thing that guy did. I have my very particular way of doing things, and so I want a blank slate. But I don't want someone that's never worked in a remote VA role before, so that's my main requirement in terms of past experience. There's no education background required here for sure. Then I want someone that is detail-oriented and loves numbers, because for a backend, admin, ecom VA, there's going to be a lot of numbers and a lot of data. And so I want someone that loves numbers. My admin on my team now, that was one of the things that was very important to her, was that she loves working with numbers. And so that's worked out very well. That's what I look for now. Proficient with spreadsheets, Google Sheets, and Excel, because a lot of this admin work is in Google Sheets. And so I want someone that knows their way around it. Then I have the 2 defaults that we put on every job posting. So exceptional written and verbal English. English is a non-negotiable, even when hiring overseas. And so I make it clear that you need to have exceptional English. Then the professional workstation with webcam, headset, stable internet. Then nice to haves. Now the first one, no prior e-commerce experience like we talked about. Then experience working with a solo founder. Because if I'm hiring my first virtual assistant, it's going to be a small team, maybe 1 other person and me. And so if they have experience working with a small team like that, huge plus. Core responsibilities. Now you'll notice this is core responsibilities. I'm not listing every single potential edge case task, monthly task they could be doing. It's focused on the things that are most valuable in this role. Now, just because I don't put something on this responsibilities doesn't mean I can't assign it to them. But I want to focus on the things that are most valuable so they can understand how best to provide me value, and I know exactly what I'm looking for. So end-to-end inventory, returns, cases, customer inquiries, listing drafts, the normal stuff an ecom VA would be handling. Expectations. So start date is always as soon as possible. I have no reason to delay. Full-time, 40 hours a week, Monday through Friday. For my team, I hire flexible schedule. They get to choose their own hours. There's benefits to hiring a fixed schedule. There's benefits to a flexible schedule. I prefer flexible schedule so that they can choose the hours that best fit them. And when I require EST, for example, it's going to lower my talent pool. So for a role like this, flexible schedule works great, widens my pool. And also I travel a lot anyway, so flexible schedule works for me. Application process. I want to make it clear what they can expect for next steps. So I have our 4-level process here. Everything takes 20 minutes. The application, the mock scenario, the one-on-one interview and the client interview or the team interview. Then contract value. I always do a monthly range for this. So for an ecom VA, no direct experience, hiring from the Philippines, $750 to $950 is a pretty solid range. Then I also mentioned holidays and other provisions like time off. It's a contract, it's not an employment, but I want to make sure that they know they have these things provided to them. And then discretionary performance bonuses. I always want people to have some way of making more money if they do excellent work. And so I make it clear in this job posting to the right candidate reading this that we offer that. Real quick, if this whole process sounds like a lot to you, it's because it is. Fortunately, it's all we do at Talented. So if you want to make more money in your e-commerce business, there's going to be a link down below to book an overseas hiring audit with my team. And from there, we can chat if it's going to be a good fit for your business. Let's get back to the video. All right, and that's the job posting. Now, there's two platforms if I were hiring from scratch that I would post on. The first one is LinkedIn. The next one is onlinejobs.ph. Now, LinkedIn, I find to have a high caliber of candidates where we get a lot of good applicants from. So I would take the job posting title, put it in here, and literally just copy everything we did here and paste it in there. Good to go. Not actually, but I'll do a little bit of basic formatting so it looks good on their end, and that's solid. Post the job. I don't really do any screening questions on this step. I usually disable rejection. Applicants are on LinkedIn, and I always turn off that hiring frame. I do not want that. And because I'm on my company page, we have to pay for job posts. We do $10 a day, but if you're not a recruitment company, then I'm pretty sure it's free on LinkedIn. Okay, launch that. Then I go over to online jobs. Now, if you're not familiar with online jobs, it's specifically for Philippines hires only. You get a high amount of applicants. There's a lot of people that are on this website looking for jobs. The pricing is pretty straightforward, $69 a month, and you can cancel when you're done, so $69 one time basically. Then very similar here, just paste the job title. Now, one thing that I didn't mention is in the title, I put for US client because that is a selling point. I want them to understand that you're working with a US company, the Western excellence that a lot of these candidates love to work with. It also means that their salary is pegged to USD, which is obviously a very strong currency. Type of employment, I always do full-time. I never hire for anything less. I want solid commitment on both sides. Then again, I want to paste the job description because online jobs doesn't allow the same formatting that LinkedIn does. I would clean this up and make it a little more readable for someone viewing it. Salary, always a range. We always put a range because I get a lot of different types of applicants, and so I want someone to place themselves within that range. Always 40 hours. And then skill requirements, I don't really think this is that helpful, but I'll probably do Google Sheets, maybe data entry, and leave it at that. For the notifications, I always choose the last one of the messaging platform. I do not want to get bombarded with emails of applicants. Cool. Then we launch both those, and within the next couple days, next week or so, I will get a lot of applicants. Now, because this is a very competitive job posting in terms of the salary, the offerings, I get a lot of applicants. It can be in the hundreds of applicants. And so the first thing we have to do is move the good ones to the next step. So I'll come here to LinkedIn. Say we have a bunch of these applicants coming in, and I'll do contact, send them a message, and send them to our Google form. That's going to be the second step. Throughout our application process, there's a lot of room for fall off, a lot of ways where I can filter out the less than ideal candidates because I want to surface just the killers, the really good ones. And so this is one way that we do that is through a mock scenario test. So it's a free Google form, just asking questions. And the goal here is really just to get to know their character. I'm very big on hiring for character, not skills, because skills can be taught, but I can't teach someone a good attitude. And so that's what this is designed to uncover. Things like how they would approach a situation if spirits are low, if a poaching situation, a efficiency situation, what they do if they got really good at their job and they have time left in their day, a leadership course, what they would do if they get really consistent with the task, and finally, work-life balance. Then I get the responses start coming in, and I'm moving people on to these next steps. Every morning, I'd be checking and moving on the good ones to the next step in the process. I want to keep this moving as quick as possible. End to end, this process could take me 14 days or less. So then I start reviewing their actual submissions, seeing if there's someone I want to spend time hopping on the call with. And if they are, I will send them my TidyCal link. Now you can use cal.com. You can use Calendly, Google Calendar scheduling. I prefer TidyCal. And I only set it so they can book with me 4 days in advance. I want this process to move quick. I don't want to be someone booking for next Thursday and I got to sit here and wait around until that interview. They're always booked for 20-minute increments, as you saw in the application process. I need to be efficient with things for my time and for theirs. All right, then we'll hop on to a Google Meet. Now, I always make sure that I record this. My personal favorite note taker is Fathom Note Taker. There it is right there. Let that boy in so that I can have a record and revisit it after. When I hop on an interview, there's two things I always have up. First is the candidate's resume, and second is my initial interview guideline. So I always follow the same structure in these initial interviews. Starts off with the introduction of me, just kind of easing the tension a little bit, letting them know I'm just here to get to know them a little bit. Now, my interviews are always very conversational. I don't want it to feel like we're in an interview because that's what allows me to get the true answers from them, not the ones they rehearsed. On that note, you'll notice a lot of these questions are not your typical interview questions, your typical like, what are your strengths and weaknesses? Because I want to get to know them on a deeper level. I want the first answer that comes to their head, not the one that they rehearsed beforehand. And so we start off by setting the frame. Then I have them walk me through their resume, getting a overview of their story, basically, how they see it in their eyes. And then that's when I'll start narrowing down to specific roles. So we'll focus on their most recent role, what they did on a day-to-day basis, why that role came to an end, if there was a gap since that role ended, and now what were you doing in between there? If there's other relevant roles, I'll dive into those as well, depending on how much time the first one takes. Then I'll ask questions about the softwares they were in, see if they're ones that align with what I use, KPIs, metrics they were evaluated on, their greatest contribution to their last company, so I can see how they go above and beyond. And then I ended off by getting the future state, what they see for themselves in the next couple of years, because I want someone where my vision for where the company is going, they can fit into it, how their long-term vision fits into mine. And so one of the questions I ask is about leadership. Could they see themselves in a leadership role? Because if I want someone to be with me for years to come, it's only natural that they would grow into a management or a leadership or a training role. And so I want to see if that's something they aspire to do, because just because they're a virtual assistant doesn't mean I can't see them taking on major parts of the company. Then I say, what do you think is a fair starting salary for this role? Because like we said on the original job posting, I have a range, and so I want them to place themselves within that range. That gives us clarity on not being surprised when I send them, we go through the whole process, I send an offer letter and they're like, oh, it's lower than I wanted. Then I wrap it up, let them know the next interview steps, and thank them for their time. Cool, now if someone did really well on this initial interview, I don't jump the gun and hire them just yet. I always do a follow-up interview. Now, the follow-up interview, I will have someone else on the call. If this is for a client, I have the client on the call. If I'm expanding my team, I'll have someone from my team on the call, see if they mesh with them. Or if it's my first time, I'll just have a friend on the call because I just want someone else to give their feedback that I trust their opinion on it. Now, the follow-up interview, first of all, I focus on me more, on the business, because up to this point, they don't really have a lot of context as to what they're going to be doing. And so I give them context on how long we've been in business, why this role is important, what our team looks like, what the working environment is, what responsibilities are most important, and again, focusing on the vision, what I see for the company and how they will fit into that. Now, I have like a couple here that I will just pull for inspiration, but it's not as cut and dry as the initial interview. So things like, how do you handle working alone? A lot of this job is going to be repetitive tasks. How do you handle that? Then I give them an opportunity to ask questions finally, because if they're a good applicant, chances are they're going to have a lot of questions based on the context that I've given. And so I want to give them the opportunity to ask those. This is usually a back and forth of like, them asking, me answering, then other questions pop up, and we let that ride until we're finished. Usually still 20 minutes. Then the question I asked to wrap it up is, do you still believe this is going to be a good role for you? I want to get that full commitment from them that, yes, like that full confidence of like, yes, we're good to go. And then I let them know, I'll get back to them with a decision in the next couple of days. I don't take a week on this. There's not much to decide from here. It's either yes or no. Now, if that follow-up interview went really well, then comes the independent contractor engagement letter. So making it very clear, outlining the terms of this agreement, of this contract. The compensation that we discussed, paid on the 1st and the 15th of each month, paid via wise.com. That's what we use. The holidays, time off, Start date, I always do the start date for the next Monday. No reason to delay. I want to move quick. So next Monday, we're good to go. Confidentiality, work scheduling, right to terminate. So I want to make sure that we have 14 days written notice for termination in the future. Independent contractor status, and that's good to go. Then the second thing I attach is a non-disclosure agreement to give myself a little bit of protection, because if they're on the back end of the business, there's going to be a lot of proprietary information that I don't want getting out to my competitors, to the public. So conflict of interest, non-disclosure, non-solicitation, all the good contract stuff. And then the thing I always include is a W-8 bend form. Now, this is not one that you need to file anywhere, but it's something good to have just in your records to prove that they are a foreign contractor. They're not a local employee. So I'll send that off via email, have a 48-hour deadline for acceptance, and then I got someone starting on Monday. All right, now you have the full system for how to hire an e-commerce virtual assistant for your business in less than 14 days. The next step is for you to launch your campaign and start getting those applicants. Now, you'll get tens, hundreds of applicants, and one of the problems I see for people that first time hiring is they don't know how to spot the good ones, because throughout these steps, you have to be able to differentiate the good answers from the bad answers, what a good VA actually looks like. So if you want to learn how I take tens of thousands of applicants and spot just the top 1%, click this video right here. It's the same process we use for all of our clients. I'll see you over there.